Good morning, and welcome back to Storytime Classics Live, produced by Southwest Shakespeare Company. I am your host, Bo Heckman, and today it's the story of a sandwich, a very delicious sandwich. And okay, I'm going to stop right there. It is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. What an epic story. I have only seen other versions of this. I have not read it, so this will be a journey for all of us. And I'm going to ask your forgiveness right up front if I do not pronounce things as they should be pronounced. I'm going to give it my best, my try, my complete effort, but it may end up being very comic in certain sections. So we're all going to laugh about that together. What can one really say about such a story of adventure and false imprisonment and love and betrayal? And I think I covered that with the false imprisonment. But I really just want to jump right into this epic tale. Very excited about it. In the comments this morning, good morning, Stanley. You have a question of, how am I doing this morning? I'm very well. You've been trying to find out what version I'll be reading from. Today I'll be reading from the Gutenberg Project version. Mine also has 117 chapters as well, if that answers your question. So I don't think they'll be too different right there. So hope you are well this morning, Stanley, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to jump right in and just start with The Count of Monte Cristo. Hope everyone is having a great Friday morning. We'll be back also on Monday with more of Count of Monte Cristo. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have Amy Bjorklund reading Rebecca. So don't miss that one at all. That's a great story as well. All right. As always, I encourage discussion and questions in the comments section, either on Southwest Shakespeare's YouTube page or on their Facebook page. All right, let us begin. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. Chapter 1. Marseille, the Arrival. On the 24th of February, 1815, the lookout at Notre-Dame de la Garde signaled the three-master, the Pharaon, from Smyrna, Trieste, and Naples. As usual, a pilot put off immediately, and rounding the Chateau d'If, got on board the vessel between Cape Morjou and Rion Island. Immediately, and according to custom, the ramparts of Fort Saint-Jean were covered with spectators. It is always an event at Marseille for a ship to come into port, especially when this ship, like the Pharaon, has been built, rigged, and laden at the old Fauchy docks and belongs to an owner of the city. The ship drew on and had safely passed the strait, which some volcanic shock had made between the Calaseragine and Jaros Islands, and had doubled Pamag and approached the harbor under topsails, jib, and spanker, but so slowly and sedately that the idlers, with that instinct which is the forerunner of evil, asked one another what misfortune could have happened on board. However, those experienced in navigation saw plainly that if any accident had occurred, it was not to the vessel herself, for she bore down with all the evidence of being skillfully handled. The anchor a cockbill, the jib boom guys already eased off and standing by the side of the pilot who was steering the Pharaon towards the narrow entrance of the inner port, was a young man who, with activity and vigilant eye, watched every motion of the ship and repeated each direction to the pilot. The vague disquietude which prevailed among the spectators had so much affected one of the crowd that he did not await the arrival of the vessel in harbor, but, jumping into a small skiff, desired to be pulled alongside the Pharaon, which he reached as he rounded into La Reserve Basin. When the young man on board saw this person approach, he left his station by the pilot and, hat in hand, leaned over the ship's bulwarks. He was a fine, tall, slim young fellow of 18 or 20, with black eyes and hair as dark as a raven's wing, and his whole appearance bespoke that calmness and resolution peculiar to men accustomed from their cradle to contend with danger. "Ah, is it you, Dantes?" cried the man in the skiff. "What's the matter, and why have you such an air of sadness aboard?" "A great misfortune, M. Morrel," replied the young man. "A great misfortune, for me especially. Off Civita Vecchia we lost our brave Captain Leclerc." "And the cargo?" inquired the owner eagerly. Is all safe, M. Morrel? And I think you will be satisfied on that head. But poor Captain Leclerc." "What happened to him?" asked the owner, with an air of considerable resignation. "What happened to the worthy captain?" "He died." "Fell into the sea?" "No, sir. He died of brain fever in dreadful agony." Then, turning to the crew, he said, "Bear a hand there to take in sail." All hands obeyed, and at once the 8 or 10 seamen who composed the crew sprang to their respective stations at the spanker brails and outhaul topsail sheets and halyards, the jib downhaul and the topsail clew lines and the butt lines. The young sailor gave a look to see that his orders were promptly and accurately obeyed, and then turned again to the owner. "And how did this misfortune occur?" inquired the latter, resuming the interrupted conversation. "Alas, sir, in the most unexpected manner. After a long talk with the harbor master, Captain Leclerc left Naples greatly disturbed in mind. In 24 hours, he was attacked by a fever and died 3 days afterwards. We performed the usual burial service, and he is at his rest, sewn up in his hammock with a 36-pound shot at his head and his heels, off El Gigolo Island." I really hope I got that right. "We bring to his widow his sword and cross of honor. It was worth while, truly," added the young man with a melancholy smile, "to make war against the English for 10 years and to die in his bed at last, like everybody else." "Why, you see, Edmond," replied the owner, who appeared more comforted at every moment, "we are all mortal, and the old must make way for the young. If not, why, there would be no promotion. And since you assure me that the cargo is all safe and sound, M. Morrel, take my word for it, and I advise you not to take 25,000 francs for the profits of the voyage." Then, as they were just passing the round tower, the young man shouted, "Stand by there to lower the topsails and jib! Break up the spanker!" The order was executed as promptly as it would have been on board a man of war. "Let go and clew up!" At this last command, all the sails were lowered, and the vessel moved almost imperceptibly onwards. "Now, if you will come on board, M. Morrel," said Dantes, observing the owner's impatience, "here is your supercargo, M. Danglars, coming out of his cabin, who will furnish you with every particular. As for me, I must look after the anchoring and dress the ship in mourning." The owner did not wait for a second invitation. He seized a rope, which Dantes flung to him, and with an activity that would have done credit to a sailor, climbed up the side of the ship, while the young man, going to his task, left the conversation to Danglars, who now came towards the owner. He was a man of 25 or 26 years of age, of unprepossessing countenance, obsequious to his superiors, insolent to his subordinates, and this, in addition to his position as responsible agent on board, which is always obnoxious to the sailors, made him as much disliked by the crew as Edmond Dantes was beloved by them. "Well, M. Morrel," said Danglars, "you have heard of the misfortune that has befallen us?" Yes, poor Captain Leclerc. He was a brave and honest man, and a first-rate seaman, one who had seen long and honorable service, as became a man charged with the interests of a house so important as that of Morrel and Son," replied Danglars. "But," replied the owner, glancing after Dantes, who was watching the anchoring of his vessel, "it seems to me that a sailor needs not be so old as you say, Danglars, to understand his business. For our friend Edmond seems to understand it thoroughly, and not to require instruction from anyone." "Yes," said Danglars, darting at Edmond, a look gleaming with hate. "Yes, he is young, and youth is invariably self-confident. Scarcely was the captain's breath out of his body when he assumed the command without consulting anyone, and he caused us to lose a day and a half at the island of Elba instead of making for Marseille direct." "As to taking command of the vessel," replied Morrel, "that was his duty as captain's mate. As to losing a day and a half off the island of Elba, he was wrong unless the vessel needed repairs. The vessel was in good condition as I am, and as I hope you are, M. Morrel, and this day and a half was lost from pure whim, for the pleasure of going ashore and nothing else." "Dantes," said the ship owner, turning towards the young man, "come this way." "In a moment, sir," answered Dantes, "and I am with you." Then calling to the crew, he said, "Let go!" The anchor was instantly dropped, and the chain ran rattling through the port-hole. Dantes continued at his post in spite of the presence of the pilot until this maneuver was completed, and then he added, "Half-mast the colors and square the yards." "You see," said Danglars, "he fancies himself captain already, upon my word." "And so, in fact, he is," said the owner, "except your signature and your partner's, M. Morrel." "And why should he not have this?" asked the owner. "He is young, it is true, but he seems to me a thorough seaman, and of full experience." A cloud passed over Danglars' brow. "Your pardon, M. Morrel," said Dantes, approaching. "The vessel now rides at anchor, and I am at your service. You hailed me, I think?" Danglars retreated a step or two. "I wished to inquire why you stopped at the island of Elba." "I do not know, sir. It was to fulfill the last instructions of Captain Leclerc, who, when dying, gave me a packet for Marshal Bertrand." "Then did you see him, Edmond?" "Who?" "The Marshal." "Yes." Morrel looked about him, and then, drawing Dantes on one side, he said suddenly, "How is the Emperor?" "Very well, as far as I could judge from the sight of him." "You saw the Emperor, then?" "He entered the Marshal's apartment while I was there." "And you spoke to him?" "Why, it was he who spoke to me, sir," said Dantes with a smile. "And what did he say to you?" "Asked me questions about the vessel, the time she left Marseille, the course she had taken, and what was her cargo. I believe if she had not been laden, and I had been her master, he would have bought her. But I told him I was only mate, and that she belonged to the firm of Morrel and Son. Ah, yes, he said, I know them. The Morrels have been ship owners from father to son, and there was a Morrel who served in the same regiment with me when I was in garrison at Valence." "Pardieu! And that is true," cried the owner, greatly delighted. "And that was Policar Morrel, my uncle, who was afterwards a captain. Dantes, you must tell my uncle that the emperor remembered him, and you will see it will bring tears to the old soldier's eyes. Come, come," continued he, patting Edmond's shoulder kindly, "you did very right, Dantes, to follow Captain Leclerc's instructions, and touch at Elba, although if it were known that you had conveyed a packet to the Marshal, and had conversed with the Emperor, it might bring you into trouble." How could that bring me into trouble, sir? Asked Dantes, for I did not even know of what I was the bearer, and the emperor merely made such inquiries as he would of the first comer. But pardon me, here are the health officers and the customs inspectors coming alongside, and the young man went to the gangway. As he departed, Danglars approached and said, "Well, it appears that he has given you satisfactory reasons for his landing at Porto Ferraro." "Yes, most satisfactory, my dear Danglars." "Well, so much the better," said the supercargo, "for it is not pleasant to think that a comrade has not done his duty." "Dantes has done his," replied the owner, "and that is not saying much. It was Captain Leclerc who gave orders for his delay." "Talking of Captain Leclerc, has not Dantes given you a letter from him?" "To me? No. Was there one?" "I believe that, besides the packet, Captain Leclerc confided a letter to his care." "Of what packet are you speaking, Danglars?" "Why, that which Dantes left at Porto Ferraro." "How do you know he had a packet to leave at Porto Ferraro?" Danglars turned very red. "I was passing close to the door of the captain's cabin, which was half open, and I saw him give the packet and letter to Dantes." "He did not speak to me of it," replied the shipowner, "but if there be any letter, he will give it to me." Danglars reflected for a moment. "Then, M. Morrel, I beg of you," said he, "not to say a word to Dantes on the subject. I may have been mistaken." At this moment, the young man returned. Danglars withdrew. "Well, my dear Dantes, are you now free?" inquired the owner. "Yes, sir." "You have not been long detained?" "No. I have the custom house officers a copy of our bill of landing, and as to the other papers, they sent a man off with the pilot, to whom I gave them." "Then you have nothing more to do here?" "No. Everything is all right now." "Then you can come and dine with me." "I really must ask you to excuse me, M. Morrel. My first visit is due to my father, though I am not the less grateful for the honor you have done me." "Right, Dantes, quite right. I always knew you were a good son." "And," inquired Dantes, with some hesitation, "do you know how my father is?" "Well, I believe, my dear Edmond, though I have not seen him lately." "Yes, he likes to keep himself shut up in his little room. That proves at least that he has wanted for nothing during your absence." Dantes smiled. "My father is proud, sir, and if he had not a meal left, I doubt if he would have asked anything from anyone, except from heaven." "Well, then, after his first visit has been made, we shall count on you." "I must again excuse myself, Mr. M. Morrel, for after this first visit has been paid, I have another which I am most anxious to pay." "True, Dantes. I forgot that there was at the Catalans someone who expects you no less impatiently than your father, the lovely Mercedes." Dantes blushed. "Aha," said the shipowner, "I am not in the least surprised, for she has been to me 3 times inquiring if there were any news of the Pharaon. Peste, Edmond, you have a very handsome mistress." "She is not my mistress," replied the young sailor gravely. "She is my betrothed." "Sometimes one and the same thing," said Morrel with a smile. "Not with us, sir," replied Dantes. Well, well, my dear Edmond," continued the owner, "don't let me detain you. You have managed my affairs so well that I ought to allow you all the time you require for your own. Do you want any money?" "No, sir. I have all my pay to take, nearly 3 months' wages." "You are a careful fellow, Edmond." "Say, I have a poor father, sir." Yes, yes, I know how good a son you are. So now hasten away to see your father. I have a son too, and I should be very wroth with those who detained him from me after a 3 months' voyage." "Then I have your leave, sir." "Yes, if you have nothing more to say to me." "Nothing. Captain Leclerc did not, before he died, give you a letter for me?" "He was unable to write it, sir. That reminds me that I must ask your leave of absence for some days." "To get married?" "Yes, first, and then go to Paris." "Very good. You have what time you require, Dantes. It will take quite 6 weeks to unload the cargo, and we cannot get you ready for sea until 3 months after that. Only be back again in 3 months. For the Pharaon, added the owner, patting the young sailor on the back, cannot sail without her captain. Without her captain, cried Dantes, his eyes sparkling with animation. Pray mind what you say, for you are touching on the most secret wishes of my heart. Is it really your intention to make me captain of the Pharaon? If I were sole owner, we'd shake hands on it now, my dear Dantes, and call it settled. But I have a partner, and you know the Italian proverb, chi ha compagno ha padron. He who has a partner has a master. But the thing is at least half done, as you have 1 out of 2 votes. Rely on me to procure you the other. I will do my best. Ah, M. Morrel, exclaimed the young seaman with tears in his eyes and grasping the owner's hand. M. Morrel, I thank you in the name of my father and of Mercedes. That is all right, Edmond. There is a providence that watches over the deserving. Go to your father. Go and see Mercedes, and afterwards come to me. Shall I row you ashore? No, thank you. I shall remain and look over the accounts with the Danglars. Have you been satisfied with him this voyage? That is according to the sense you attach to the question, sir. Do you mean, is he a good comrade? No, for I think he never liked me since the day when I was silly enough, after a little quarrel we had, to propose to him to stop for 10 minutes at the island of Monte Cristo to settle the dispute, a proposition which I was wrong to suggest, and he quite right to refuse. If you mean as responsible agent when you ask me the question, I believe there is nothing to say against him, and that you will be content with the way in which he has performed his duty. But tell me, Dantes, if you have command of the Pharaon, should you be glad to see Danglars remain? Captain or mate, M. Morrel, I shall always have the greatest respect for those who possess the owner's confidence. That's right, Dantes. I see you are a thoroughly good fellow, and will detain you no further, for if I see how impatient you are. Then I have leave. Go, I tell you. May I have the use of your skiff? Certainly. Then, for the present, M. Morrel, farewell, and 1,000 thanks. I hope soon to see you again, my dear Edmond. Good luck to you. The young sailor jumped into the skiff and sat down in the stern sheets, with the order that he be put ashore at La Cannebière. The 2 oarsmen bent to their work, and the little boat glided away as rapidly as possible in the midst of the 1,000 vessels which choke up the narrow way which leads between the 2 rows of ships from the mouth of the harbor to the Quai d'Orléans. The shipowner, smiling, followed him with his eyes until he saw him spring out on the quay and disappear in the midst of the throng, which from 5 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night swarms in the famous street of La Cannebière, a street of which the modern Phocéens were so proud that they say with all the gravity in the world, and with that accent which gives so much character to what is said, if Paris had La Cannebière, Paris would be a second Marseille. On turning round the corner, saw Danglars behind him, apparently awaiting orders, but in reality also watching the young sailor. But there was a great difference in the expression of the 2 men, and who thus followed the movements of Edmond Dantes. Chapter 2. Father and Son. We will leave Danglars struggling with the demon of hatred and endeavoring to insulate in the ear of the ship power some evil suspicions against his comrade, and follow Dantes, who, after having traversed La Cannebière, took the Rue des Noailles, and entering a small house on the left of the Allée des Melham, rapidly ascended 4 flights of a dark staircase, holding the bolster with one hand, while the other he repressed the beatings of his heart, and pushed before a half-open door from which he could see the whole of a small room. This room was occupied by Dante's father. The news of the arrival of the Pharaon had not yet reached the old man, who mounted on a chair, was amusing himself by training with trembling hand the nasturtiums and sprays of the clematis that clambered over the trellis at his window. Suddenly he felt an arm thrown round his body, and a well-known voice behind him exclaimed, "Father! Dear father!" The old man uttered a cry and turned round. Then, seeing his son, he fell into his arms, pale and trembling. "What ails you, my dearest father? Are you ill?" inquired the young man, much alarmed. "No, no, my dear Edmond, my boy, my son, no! But I did not expect you. Enjoy the surprise of seeing you so suddenly. I feel as if I were going to die." Come, come, cheer up, my dear father. "'Tis I, really I. They say joy never hurts, and so I come to you without any warning. Come now, do smile, instead of looking at me so solemnly. Here I am back again, and we are going to be happy." "Yes, yes, my boy, so we will, replied the old man. "But how shall we be happy? Shall you never leave me again? Come, tell me all the good fortune that has befallen you." "God forgive me," said the young man, "for rejoicing at happiness derived from the misery of others, but heaven knows I did not seek this good fortune. It has happened, and I really cannot pretend to lament it. The good Captain Leclerc is dead, father, and it is probable that, with the aid of M. Morel, I shall have his place. Do you understand, father? Only imagine me a captain at 20, with 100 louis pay, and a share in the profits. Is this not more than a poor sailor like me could have hoped for?" "Yes, my dear boy," replied the old man, "it is very fortunate." "Well then, with the first money I touch, I mean you to have a small house with a garden in which to plant clematis, nasturtiums, and honeysuckle. But what ails you, father? Are you not well?" "'Tis nothing, nothing. It will soon pass away." And as he said so, the old man's strength failed him, and he fell backwards. "Come, come," said the young man. "A glass of wine, father, will revive you. Where do you keep your wine?" "No, no, thanks. You need not look for it. I do not want it," said the old man. "Yes, yes, father. Tell me where it is." And he opened 2 or 3 cupboards. "It is no use," said the old man. "There is no wine." "What? No wine?" says Dantes, turning pale and looking alternately at the hollow cheeks of the old man and the empty cupboards. "What, no wine? Have you wanted money, father?" "I want nothing now that I have you," said the old man. "Yet," stammered Dantes, wiping the perspiration from his brow, "yet I gave you 200 francs when I left 3 months ago." "Yes, yes, Edmond, that is true, but you forgot at the time a little debt to our neighbor, Caderhouse. Let me try that again. Caderus. He reminded me of it, telling me if I did not pay for you, he would not be paid by M. Morel, and so you see, least he might do you an injury." "Well, why, I paid him." "But," cried Dantes, "it was 140 francs I owed Caderus." "Yes," stammered the old man. "And you paid him out of the 200 francs I left you?" The old man nodded. "So that you have lived for 3 months on 60 francs, muttered Edmond. "You know how little I require," said the old man. "Heaven pardon me," cried Edmond, falling on his knees before his father. "What are you doing? You have wounded me to the heart." "Never mind it, for I see you once more," said the old man, "and now it's all over. Everything is all right again." "Yes, here I am," said the young man, "with a promising future and a little money. Here, father, here," he said, "take this, take it, and send for something immediately. and he emptied his pockets on the table, the contents consisting of 12 gold pieces, 5 or 6 5-franc pieces, and some smaller coin. The countenance of old Dantes brightened. "Whom does this belong to?" he inquired. "To me, to you, to us. Take it. Buy some provisions. Be happy, and tomorrow we shall have more." "Gently, gently," said the old man with a smile, "and by your leave I will use your purse moderately, for they would say, if they saw me buy too many things at a time, that I had been obliged to await your return in order to be able to purchase them. Do as you please, but, first of all, pray have a servant, father. I will not have you left alone so long. I have some smuggled coffee and most capital tobacco in a small chest in the hold, which you shall have tomorrow. But hush, here comes somebody. 'Tis Caderousse, who has heard of your arrival, and no doubt comes to congratulate you on your fortunate return." "Ah, lips that say one thing while the heart thinks another," murmured Edmond. "But never mind, he is a neighbor who has done us a service on a time, so he's welcome." As Edmond paused, the black and bearded head of Caderousse appeared at the door. He was a man of 25 or 26, and held a piece of cloth, which, being a tailor, he was about to make into a coat lining. "What, is it you, Edmond, back again?" said he, with a broad Marseillais accent and a grin that displayed his ivory white teeth. "Yes, as you see, neighbor Caderousse, and ready to be agreeable to you in any and every way," replied Dantes, but ill concealing his coldness under his cloak of civility. Thanks, but fortunately I do not want for anything, and it chances that at times there are others who have need of me." Dantes made a gesture. "I do not allude to you, my boy. No. I lent you money, and you returned it. That's like good neighbors, and we are quits." "We are never quits with those who oblige us," was Dantes' reply. "For when we do not owe them money, we owe them gratitude." "What is the use of mentioning that? Was it done? What is done is done. Let us talk of your happy return, my boy. I had gone on the quay to match a piece of mulberry cloth when I met friend Danglars. "You at Marseille?" "Yes," says he. "I thought you were at Smyrna." "I was, but I am now back again." "And where is the dear boy, our little Edmond?" "Why, with his father, no doubt," replied Danglars. "And so I came," added Caderousse, "as fast as I could to have the pleasure of shaking hands with a friend." "Worthy Caderousse," said the old man, "he is so much attached to us." "Yes, to be sure I am. I love and esteem you because honest folks are so rare. It seems you have come back rich, my boy," continued the tailor, looking askance at the handful of gold and silver which Dantes had thrown on the table. The young man remarked the greedy glance which shone in the dark eyes of his neighbor. "Eh?" he said, negligently. "This money is not mine, and I was expressing to my father my fears that he had wanted many things in my absence, and to convince me he emptied his purse on the table. Come, father," added Dantes, "put this money back in your box, unless neighbor Caderousse wants anything, and in that case it is at his service." No, my boy, no," said Caderousse. "I am not in any want, thank God. My living is suited to my means. Keep your money, keep it, I say. No one ever has too much, but at the same time, my boy, I have as much obliged by your offer as if I took advantage of it." "It was offered with goodwill," said Dantes. "No doubt, my boy, no doubt. Well, you stand well with M. Morrel, I hear, you insinuating dog, you." "Mr. M. Morrel was always been exceedingly kind to me," replied Dantes. "Then you were wrong to refuse to dine. Then you were wrong to refuse to dine with him." What? Did you refuse to dine with him?" said old Dantes. "And did he invite you to dine?" "Yes, my dear father," replied Edmond, smiling at his father's astonishment at the excessive honor paid to his son. "And why did you refuse, my son?" inquired the old man. "That I might the sooner see you again, my dear father," replied the young man. "I was most anxious to see you." "But it must have vexed M. Morrel, good worthy man," said Caderousse, "and when you are looking forward to be captain, it was wrong to annoy the owner." "But I explained to him the cause of my refusal," replied Dantes, "and I hope he fully understood it." "Yes, but to be captain one must do a little flattery to one's patrons." "I hope to be captain without that," said Dantes. "So much the better, so much the better. Nothing will give greater pleasure to all our old friends, and I know one down there behind the St. Nicholas citadel who will not be sorry to hear it." "Mercédès," said the old man. "Yes, my dear father, and with your permission, now I have seen you and know you are well, I have all you require, I will ask your consent to go and pay a visit to the Catalans." "Go, my dear boy," said old Dantes, "and heaven bless you in your wife, as it has blessed me in my son." "His wife?" said Caderousse. "Why, how fast you go on, Father Dantes! She is not his wife yet, as it seems to me." "No, but according to all probability she soon will be," replied Edmond. Yes, said Caderousse, "but you are right to return as soon as possible, my boy." "And why?" "Because Mercédès is a very fine girl, and very fine girls never lack followers. She particularly has them by dozens." "Really?" answered Edmond, with a smile which had in it traces of slight uneasiness. "Ah, yes," continued Caderousse, "and capital offers, too. But, you know, you will be captain, and who could refuse you then?" "Meaning to say," replied Dantes, with a smile which but ill-concealed as his trouble, "that if I were not a captain—" said Caderousse, shaking his head. Come, said the sailor, "I have a better question than you of women in general, and of Mercédès in particular, and I am certain that, captain or not, she will remain ever faithful to me." "So much the better, so much the better," said Caderousse. "When one is going to be married, there is nothing like implicit confidence. But never mind that, my boy. Go and announce your arrival, and let her know all your hopes and prospects." "I will go directly," was Edmond's reply, and, embracing his father and nodding to Caderousse, he left the apartment. Caderousse lingered for a moment, then, taking leave of old Dantes, he went downstairs to rejoin Danglars, who awaited him at the corner of the Rue Senac. "Well," said Danglars, "did you see him?" "I have just left him," answered Caderousse. "Did he allude to his hope of being captain?" "He spoke of it as a thing already decided." "Indeed," said Danglars. "He is in too much hurry, it appears to me." "Why, it seems M. Morrel has promised him the thing, so that he is quite elated about it." Yes, he is actually insolent over the matter. He has already offered me his patronage, and if he were a grand personage, and proffered me a loan of money as though he were a banker." "Which you refused?" "Most assuredly, although I might easily have accepted it, for it was I who put it into his hands the first silver he ever earned. But now M. Dantes has no longer any occasion for assistance. He is about to become a captain." "Pooh!" said Danglars, "he is not one yet." "Ma foi, it will be as well if he is not," answered Caderousse, "for if he should be, there will be really no speaking to him." "If we choose," replied Danglars, "he will remain what he is, and perhaps become even less than he is." "What do you mean?" "Nothing. I was speaking to myself. And is he still in love with the Catalan?" "Over head and ears. But, unless I am much mistaken, there will be a storm in that quarter." "Explain yourself." "Why should I?" "It is more important than you think, perhaps. You do not like Dantes?" "I never like upstarts." "Then tell me all you know about the Catalan." "I know nothing for certain. Only I have seen things which induce me to believe, as I told you, that the future captain will find some annoyance in the vicinity of the Villers infirmaries." "What have you seen? Come, tell me." Well, every time I have seen Mercedes come into the city, she has been accompanied by a tall, strapping, black-eyed Catalan with a red complexion, brown skin, and fierce air, whom she calls cousin. Really? And you think this cousin pays her attentions? I only suppose so. What else can a strapping chap of 21 mean with a fine wench of 17? And you say that Dantes has gone to the Catalans? He went before I came down. Let us go the same way. We will stop at La Reserve, and we can drink a glass of La Malheur whilst we wait for news. Come along, said Caderousse, but you pay the score. Of course, replied Danglars, and going quickly to the designated place, they called for a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Pierre Pamphile had seen Dantes pass not 10 minutes before, and assured that he was at the Catalans. They sat down under the building foliage of the plains and sycamores, in the branches of which the birds were singing their welcome to one of the first days of spring. Chapter 3. The Catalans. Beyond a bare, weather-worn wall, about 100 paces from the spot where the 2 friends sat looking and listening as they drank their wine, was the village of the Catalans. Long ago this mysterious colony quitted Spain and settled on the tongue of land on which it is to this day. Whence it came no one knew, and it spoke an unknown tongue. One of its chiefs, who understood Provençal, begged the commune of Marseille to give them this bare and barren promontory, while, like the sailors of old, they had run their boats ashore. The request was granted, and 3 months afterwards, around the 12 or 15 small vessels which had brought these gypsies of the sea, a small village sprang up. This village, constructed in a singular and picturesque manner of half Moorish, half Spanish, still remains and is inhabited by its descendants of the first-comers, who speak the language of their fathers. For 3 or 4 centuries they have remained upon this small promontory, on which they had settled like a flight of seabirds, without mixing with the Marseillais population, intermarrying and preserving their original customs and the costume of their mother country, as they have preserved its language. Our readers will follow us along the only street of this little village, and enter with us one of the houses, which is sunburned to the beautiful dead leaf color peculiar to the buildings of the country, and within coated with whitewash like a Spanish posada. A young and beautiful girl, with hair as black as jet, her eyes as velvety as the gazelle's, was leaning with her back against the wainscot, rubbing in her slender, delicately molded fingers a bunch of heath blossoms, the flowers of which she was picking off and strewing on the floor, her arms bare to the elbow, brown and modeled after those of the Arlesian Venus, moved with a kind of restless impatience, and she tapped the earth with her arched and supple foot, so as to display the pure and full shape of her well-turned leg, in its red cotton, grey and blue-clocked stocking. At 3 paces from her, seated in a chair which he balanced on 2 legs, leaning his elbow on an old worm-eaten table, was a tall young man of 20, or 22, who was looking at her with an air in which vexation and uneasiness were mingled. He questioned her with his eyes, but the firm and steady gaze of the young girl controlled his look. "You see, Mercedes," said the young man, "here is Easter come round again. Tell me, is this the moment for a wedding? I have answered you 100 times, Ferdinand, and really you must be very stupid to ask me again. Well, repeat it, I beg of you, that I may at last believe it. Tell me for the 100th time that you refuse my love, which had your mother's sanction. Make me understand once for all that you are trifling with my happiness, that my life or death are nothing to you. To have dreamed for 10 years of being your husband, Mercedes, and to lose that hope, which was the only stay of my existence." At least it was not I who ever encouraged you in that hope, Ferdinand, replied Mercedes. You cannot reproach me with the slightest coquetry. I have always said to you, I love you as a brother, but do not ask from me more than sisterly affection. For my heart is another's. Is not this true, Ferdinand? Yes, that is very true, Mercedes, replied the young man. Yes, you have been cruelly frank with me, but do you forget that it is among the Catalans a sacred law to intermarry? You mistake, Ferdinand. It is not a law, but merely a custom. A custom, and I pray of you, do not cite this custom in your favor. You are included in the conscription, Ferdinand, and are only at liberty on sufferance, liable at any moment to be called upon to take up arms. Once a soldier, what would you do with me? A poor orphan, forlorn, without fortune, with nothing but a half-ruined hut and a few ragged nets, the miserable inheritance left by my father to my mother and by my mother to me. She has been dead a year, and you know, Ferdinand, I have subsisted almost entirely on public charity. Sometimes you pretend I am useful to you, and that is an excuse to share with me the produce of your fishing, and I accept it. Ferdinand, because you are the son of my father's brother, because we were brought up together, and still more because it would give you so much pain if I refuse. But I feel very deeply that this fish which I go and sell, and with the produce of which I buy the flax and I spin, I feel very keenly, Ferdinand, that this is charity. And if it were, Mercedes, poor and lone as you are, you suit me as well as the daughter of the first ship owner or the richest banker of Marseille. What do such as we desire but a good wife and careful housekeeper? And where can I look for these better than in you? Ferdinand, answered Mercedes, shaking her head, a woman becomes a bad manager, and who shall say she will remain an honest woman when she loves another man better than her husband? Rest content with my friendship, for I say at once that is all I can promise. I will promise no more than I can bestow. I understand, replied Ferdinand. You can endure your own wretchedness patiently, but you are afraid to share mine. Well, Mercedes, beloved by you, I must tempt fortune, and would bring me good luck, and I should become rich. I could extend my occupation as a fisherman, might get a place as a clerk in a warehouse, and become in time a dealer myself. You could do no such thing, Ferdinand. You are a soldier, and if you remain at the Catalans, it is because there is no war. So remain a fisherman, and contented with my friendship, as I cannot give you more. Well, I will do better, Mercedes. I will be a sailor instead of the costume of our forefathers, which you despise. I will wear a varnished hat, a striped shirt, and blue jacket, with an anchor on the buttons. Would not that dress please you? What do you mean? Asked Mercedes, with an angry glance. What do you mean? I do not understand you. I mean, Mercedes, that you are thus harsh and cruel with me because you are expecting someone who is thus attired. But perhaps he whom you await is inconsistent, or if he is not, the sea is so to him. Ferdinand, cried Mercedes, I believe you are good-hearted as I was mistaken. Ferdinand, you are wicked to call to your aid jealousy and the anger of God. Yes, I will not deny it. I do await, and I do love him of whom you speak. And if he does not return, instead of accusing him of the inconsistency which you insinuate, I will tell you that he died loving me and me only. The young girl made a gesture of rage. I understand you, Ferdinand. You would be revenged on him because I do not love you. You would cross your Catalan knife with his dirk. What end would that answer? To lose my friendship if he were conquered, and see that friendship changed into hate if you were victor. Believe me, to seek a quarrel with a man is a bad method of pleasing the woman who loves that man. No, Ferdinand. You will content yourself with having me for your friend and sister. And besides, she added, her eyes troubled and moistened with tears. Wait, Ferdinand. You said just now that the sea was treacherous, and he has been gone for 4 months, and during these 4 months there have been some terrible storms." Ferdinand made no reply, nor did he attempt to check the tears which flowed down the cheeks of Mercedes, although for each of these tears he would have shed his heart's blood. These tears flowed for another. He arose, paced a while up and down the hut, and then, suddenly stopping before Mercedes, with his eyes glowing and his hands clenched, "Say, Mercedes," he said, "once for all, is this your final determination?" "I love Edmond Dantes," the young girl calmly replied, "and none but Edmond shall ever be my husband." "And you will always love him?" "As long as I live." Ferdinand let fall his head like a defeated man, heaved a sigh that was like a groan, and then suddenly, looking her full in the face, with clenched teeth and expanded nostrils, said, "But if he is dead, I shall die too. If he has forgotten you—" "Mercedes!" called a joyous voice from without. "Mercedes!" "Ah!" exclaimed the young girl, blushing with delight and fairly leaping in excess of love. "You see he has not forgotten me, for he is here." And rushing towards the door, she opened it, saying, "Here, Edmond, here I am." Ferdinand, pale and trembling, drew back, like a traveller at the sight of a serpent, and fell into a chair beside him. Edmond and Mercedes were clasped in each other's arms. The burning Marseille sun, which shot into the room through the open door, covered them with a flood of light. At first they saw nothing around them. Their intense happiness isolated them from all the rest of the world, and they only spoke in broken words, which are the tokens of a joy so extreme that they seem rather the expression of sorrow. Suddenly Edmond saw the gloomy, pale, and threatening countenance of Ferdinand, as it was defined in the shadow. By a movement for which he could scarcely account to himself, the young Catalan placed his hand on the knife at his belt. "Ah, your pardon," says Dantes, frowning in his turn. "I did not perceive that there were 3 of us." Then, turning to Mercedes, he inquired, "Who is this gentleman?" "One who will be your best friend, Dantes, for he is my friend, my cousin, my brother. It is Ferdinand, the man whom, after you, Edmond, I love the best in the world. Do you not remember him?" "Yes," said Dantes, and without relinquishing Mercedes, hand clasped in one of his own, he extended the other to the Catalan with a cordial air. But Ferdinand, instead of responding to this amiable gesture, remained mute and trembling. Edmond then cast his eyes scrutinizingly at the agitated and embarrassed Mercedes, and then again on the gloomy and menacing Ferdinand. This told him all, and his anger waxed hot. "I did not know when I came with such haste to you that I was to be met in enemy here." "An enemy?" cried Mercedes, with an angry look at her cousin. "An enemy in my house, do you say, Edmond? If I believed that, I would place my arm under yours and go with you to Marseille, leaving the house to return to it no more." Ferdinand's eye darted lightning. "And should any misfortune occur to you, dear Edmond," he continued, with the same calmness which proved to Ferdinand that the young girl had read the very innermost depths of his sinister thought, "if misfortune should occur to you, I would ascend the highest point of the Cape de Morgue and cast myself headlong from it." Ferdinand became deadly pale. "But you are deceived, Edmond," he continued. "You have no enemy here. There is no one but Ferdinand, my brother, who will grasp your hand as a devoted friend." And at those words the young girl fixed her imperious look on the Catalan, who, as if fascinated by it, came slowly towards Edmond and offered him his hand. His hatred, like a powerless though furious wave, was broken against the strong ascendancy which Mercedes exercised over him. Scarcely, however, had he touched Edmond's hand when he felt he had done all he could do, and rushed hastily out of the house. "Oh," he exclaimed, running furiously and tearing at his hair, "oh, who will deliver me from this man? Wretched, wretched that I am!" "Hallo, Catalan! Hallo, Ferdinand! What are you running to?" exclaimed a voice. The young man stopped suddenly, looked round him, and perceived Caderus sitting at a table with Danglars under an arbor. "Well," said Caderus, "why don't you come? Are you really in such a hurry that you have no time to pass the time of day with your friends?" "Particularly when they have still a full bottle before them," added Danglars. Ferdinand looked at them with a stupefied air, but did not say a word. "He seems besotted," said Danglars, pushing Caderus with his knee. "Are we mistaken, and is Dantes triumphant in spite of all we have believed?" "Why, we must inquire to that," was Caderus's reply, and turning towards the young man, said, "Well, Catalan, can't you make up your mind?" Ferdinand wiped away the perspiration stemming from his brow, and suddenly entered the arbor, whose shade seemed to restore somewhat of calmness to his senses, and whose coolness somewhat of refreshment to his exhausted body. "Good day," said he. "You called me, didn't you?" And he fell rather than sat down on one of the seats which surrounded the table. "I called you because you were running like a madman, and I was afraid you would throw yourself into the sea," said Caderus, laughing. "Why, when a man has friends, they are not only to offer him a glass of wine, but, moreover, to prevent his swallowing 3 or 4 pints of water unnecessarily." Ferdinand gave a groan which resembled a sob, and dropped his head onto his hands, his elbows leaning on the table. "Well, Ferdinand, I must say," said Caderus, beginning the conversation with that brutality of the common people in which a curiosity destroys all diplomacy, "you look uncommonly like a rejected lover." And he burst into a hoarse laugh. "Bah!" said Danglars, "a lad of his make was not born to be unhappy in love. You are laughing at him, Caderus." "No," he replied, "only hark how he sighs." "Come, come, Ferdinand," said Caderus, "hold up your head and answer us. It's not polite not to reply to friends who ask news of your health." "My health is well enough," said Ferdinand, clenching his hands without raising his head. "Ah, you see, Danglars," said Caderus, winking at his friend, "this is how it is. Ferdinand, whom you see here, is a good and brave Catalan, one of the best fishermen in Marseille, and he is in love with a very fine girl named Mercedes. But it appears, unfortunately, that the fine girl is in love with the mate of the Pharaon, and as the Pharaon arrived today, why, you understand." "No, I do not understand," said Danglars. "Poor Ferdinand has been dismissed," continued Caderus. "Well, and what then?" said Ferdinand, lifting up his head and looking at Caderus like a man who looks for someone on whom to vent his anger. "Mercedes is not accountable to any person, is she? Is she not free to love whomever she will?" "Oh, if you take it in that sense," said Caderus, "it is another thing. But I thought you were a Catalan, and they told me that the Catalans were not men to allow themselves to be supplanted by a rival. It was even told me that Ferdinand especially was terrible in his vengeance." Ferdinand smiled piteously. "A lover is never terrible," he said. "Poor fellow," remarked Danglars, affecting to pity the young man from the bottom of his heart. "Why, you see, he did not expect to see Dantes return so suddenly. He thought he was dead, perhaps, or perchance faithless. These things always come on us more severely when they come suddenly." "Ma foi, under any circumstances," said Caderus, who drank as he spoke, and on whom the fumes of the wine began to take effect. "Under any circumstances, Ferdinand is not the only person put out by the fortunate arrival of Dantes. Is he, Danglars?" "No, you are right, and I should say that would bring him ill luck." "Well, never mind," answered Caderus, pouring out a glass of wine for Ferdinand, and filling his own for the 8th or 9th time, while Danglars had merely sipped his. "Never mind. In the meantime, he marries Mercedes, the lovely Mercedes. At least he returns to do that." During this time, Danglars fixed his piercing glance on the young man, on whose heart Caderus's words fell like a molten lead. "And when is the wedding to be?" he asked. "Oh, it is not yet fixed," murmured Ferdinand. "No, but it will be," said Caderus. "As surely as Dantes, he will be captain of the Pharaon." Danglars?" Danglars shuddered at this unexpected attack, and turned to Caderousse, whose countenance he scrutinized, to try and detect whether the blow was premeditated, but he read nothing but envy in a countenance already rendered brutal and stupid by drunkenness. "Well," said he, filling the glasses, "let us drink to Captain Edmond Dantes, husband of the beautiful Catalan." Caderousse raised his glass to his mouth with unsteady hand, and swallowed the contents at a gulp. Ferdinand dashed his on the ground. Stammered Caderousse. "What do I see down there by the wall in the direction of the Catalans? Look, Ferdinand, your eyes are better than mine. I believe I see double. You know wine is a deceiver, but I should say it was two lovers walking side by side and hand in hand. Heaven forgive me, they do not know that we can see them, and they are actually embracing." Danglars did not lose one pang that Ferdinand endured. "Do you know them, Ferdinand?" he said. "Yes," was the reply in a low voice. "It is Edmond and Mercedes." "Ah, see there now," said Caderousse, "and I did not recognize them. Hello, Dantes! Hello, lovely damsel! Come this way, and let us know when the wedding is to be, for Ferdinand here is so obstinate he will not tell us." "Hold your tongue, will you?" said Danglars, pretending to restrain Caderousse, who, with the tenacity of drunkards, leaned out of the arbor. "Try to stand upright, and let the lovers make love without interruption. See, look at Ferdinand, and follow his example. He is well behaved." Ferdinand, probably excited beyond bearing, pricked by Danglars as the bull is by the bandoleros, was about to rush out, for he had risen from his seat and seemed to be collecting himself to dash headlong upon his rival, when Mercedes, smiling and graceful, lifted up her lovely head and looked at them with her clear and bright eyes. And this Ferdinand recollected her threat of dying if Edmond died, and dropped again heavily on his seat. Danglars looked at the two men, one after the other, the one brutalized by liquor, and the other overwhelmed with love. "I shall get nothing from these fools," he muttered, "and I am very much afraid of being here between a drunkard and a coward. Here's an envious fellow making himself boozy on wine when he ought to be nursing his wrath, and here is a fool who sees the woman he loves stolen from under his nose and takes on like a big baby. Yet this Catalan has eyes that glisten like those of the vengeful Spaniards, Sicilians, and Calabrians, and the other has fits big enough to crush an ox at one blow. Unquestionably, Edmond's star is in the ascendant, and he will marry the splendid girl, he will be captain too, and laugh at all of us, unless—" a sinister smile passed over Danglars' lips, "unless I can take a hand in the affair," he added. "Hello," continued Caderousse, half rising and with his fist on the table. "Hello, Edmond, do you not see your friends, or are you too proud to speak to them?" "No, my dear fellow," replied Dantes, "I am not proud, but I am happy, and happiness blinds, I think, more than pride." "Ha! Very well, that's an explanation," said Caderousse. "How do you know Madame Dantes?" "Mercedes—" "How do you do, Madame Dantes?" Mercedes curtsied gravely and said, "That is not my name, and in my country it bodes ill fortune, they say, to call a young girl by the name of her betrothed before he becomes her husband. So call me Mercedes, if you please." "We must excuse our worthy neighbor, Caderousse," said Dantes. "He is so easily mistaken." "So then the wedding is to take place immediately, M. Dantes," said Danglars, bowing to the young couple. "As soon as possible, M. Danglars. Today all preliminaries will be arranged at my father's, and tomorrow, or next day at least, the wedding festival here at La Réserve. My friends will be there, I hope, and it is to say you are invited, M. Danglars, and you, Caderousse." "And Ferdinand," said Caderousse with a chuckle. "Ferdinand, too, is invited." "My wife's brother is my brother," said Edmond, "and we, Mercedes and I, should be very sorry if he were absent at such a time." Ferdinand opened his mouth to reply, but his voice died on his lips, and he could not utter a word. Today the preliminaries, tomorrow or next day the ceremony. You are in a hurry, Captain. Danglars, said Edmond, smiling. I will say to you as Mercedes said just now to Gaterus, do not give me a title which does not belong to me. That may bring me bad luck. Your pardon, replied Danglars. I merely said you seemed in a hurry, and we have lots of time. The Pharaon cannot be under way again in less than 3 months. We are always in a hurry to be happy, M. Danglars, for when we have suffered a long time, we have great difficulty in believing in good fortune. But it is not selfishness alone that makes me thus in haste. I must go to Paris. Oh, really? To Paris? And will it be the first time you have ever been there, Dantes? Yes. Have you business there? Not of my own. The last commission of poor Captain Leclerc, you know to what I allude, Danglars, it is sacred. Besides, I shall only take the time to go and return. Yes, I understand, said Danglars, and then in a low tone he added, to Paris, no doubt to deliver the letter which the Grand Marshal gave him. This letter gives me an idea, a capital idea. Dantes, my friend, you are not yet registered number 1 on board the good ship Pharaon. Then towards Edmond, who was walking away, a pleasant journey, he cried. Thank you, said Edmond with a friendly nod, and the two lovers continued on their way, as calm and joyous as if they were the very elect of heaven. And we will stop here today at Chapter 4, Conspiracy, and pick up with that next time, which will be Monday on Storytime Classics Live. I will now check the comments section. Nothing new to report. As always, if you view this later, please feel free to comment or start a discussion about the story here. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Friday and weekend. If you are going out, please be safe and wear a mask. We'll catch you next time on Storytime Classics Live.